When two or more countries expand the quantity and quality of their military resources in order to acquire military and political dominance over one another, an arms race ensues. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union was likely the most massive and costly arms race in history. Nonetheless, others have happened, often with disastrous effects. Some commentators agree with Sir Edward Grey, Britain's foreign minister at the commencement of World War I, who declared, "The moral is apparent, it is that large weapons lead inexorably to war." With the Industrial Revolution came new armament, notably greatly superior battleships. France and Russia constructed large armies in the late 19th century to counter the growth of British colonialism. In reaction, the United Kingdom strengthened the Royal Navy in order to maintain control of the seas. Britain was able to end its weapons competition with France and Russia through two distinct accords. Yet, Germany had significantly boosted its military budget and capability, constructing a strong fleet to challenge Britain's naval dominance in the aspirations of becoming a world power. In response, Britain enlarged the Royal Navy and built more modern and powerful battle cruisers, such as the 1906 HMS Dreadnought, a technologically advanced kind of battleship that established the standard for naval construction. Not to be outdone, Germany built its own fleet of Dreadnought-class battleships, and the stalemate persisted, with both sides building bigger and better ships in anticipation of a naval attack from the other. Germany, on the other hand, couldn't keep up, and Britain won the so-called Anglo-German arms race. The disagreement did not trigger World War I, but it did contribute to increased distrust and tensions between Germany, the United Kingdom, and other European nations. Following World War I, numerous governments expressed an interest in armaments control. President Woodrow Wilson paved the path by emphasizing it in his famous 1918 14-points address, in which he outlined his vision for post-war peace. The United States, Britain, and Japan signed a convention to restrict weaponry during the Washington Naval Conference, 1921 to 1922, but Japan opted not to extend the accord in the mid-1930s. Moreover, Germany broke the Treaty of Versailles and commenced rearmament. This sparked a new arms race in Europe between Germany, France, and Britain, as well as a Pacific weapons race between Japan and the United States, which lasted until World War II. Although being hesitant partners throughout World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union's friendship deteriorated after Nazi Germany surrendered in May 1945. The United States was suspicious of the Soviet Union's goal for world supremacy as it increased its power and influence over Eastern Europe, while the Soviet Union resented America's geopolitical involvement and armaments buildup. To add to the suspicion, the U.S. did not inform the Soviet Union that it planned to launch an atomic bomb on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, despite informing them that such a device had been developed. The United States increased its nuclear arsenal to deter Soviet communist expansion. Nevertheless, the Russians launched their own atomic weapon in 1949, launching the Cold War nuclear arms race. In 1952, the United States tested the highly deadly hydrogen superbomb, and the Soviet Union followed suit in 1953. 4 years later, both nations conducted their first intercontinental ballistic missile tests, escalating the weapons race to dangerous new heights. The launch of the first Sputnik satellite by the Soviet Union on October 4, 1957, startled and alarmed the United States and the rest of the world, as it transformed the Cold War armaments race into the space race. President Dwight D. Eisenhower attempted to temper the enthusiasm around the launch's success while pouring federal monies into the United States space program in order to avoid falling behind. The United States successfully launched its first satellite into orbit on January 31, 1958, after a series of accidents and failures, and the space race continued as both countries investigated new technology to develop more powerful weaponry and surveillance systems. throughout the 1950s, the United States became convinced that the Soviet Union had better missile capability that, if launched, could not be defended against. This theory, known as the missile gap, was eventually disproved by the CIA but not before causing grave concern to U.S. officials. Many politicians used the missile gap as a talking point in the 1960 presidential election. Yet, in fact, U.S. missile power was superior to that of the Soviet Union at the time. Over the next 3 decades, however, both countries grew their arsenals to well over 10,000 warheads. After the failed effort by the John F. Kennedy administration to depose Cuban Premier Fidel Castro in 1962, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev established a covert deal to install Soviet weapons in Cuba to prevent future coup attempts. As U.S. intelligence discovered missile sites being built in Cuba, the U.S. imposed a blockade and demanded that the Soviet Union dismantle the bases and remove any nuclear weapons. The tense Cuban Missile Crisis escalated as Kennedy and Khrushchev exchanged letters and made demands. The crisis ended peacefully, but both sides, as well as the American people, had been bracing for nuclear war and began to doubt the necessity for weapons that assured victory. The Cold War ended in 1991, with the fall of the Soviet Union and the fall of the Berlin Wall. Nonetheless, the United States and the Soviet Union had signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, INF, in 1987 to limit the range and capability of all types of missiles. Subsequent deals, including as the START I Pact in 1991 and the New START Treaty in 2011, attempted to decrease both countries' ballistic weapons capabilities even more. Nevertheless, the U.S. withdrew from the INF Accord in 2019, saying that Russia was not complying. Despite the Cold War between the U.S. and Russia has ended, many contend that the arms race has not. Other nations, such as India and Pakistan, North Korea and South Korea, and Iran and China, have increased their military strength and are either in or about to enter a modern-day arms race. Watch other videos on our channel, like and subscribe as a